What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we're getting into that haven't done before mode, I guess we'll call it, because I have never, look, I've done a lot of suspension, never done an air ride setup. We got a lot to go on the 55 here. So today, you know, you guys saw a while back, we posted the unboxing of all the parts over there. You can see stacked up, and we're gonna start putting some of those on today, or at least hopefully. We're definitely gonna be getting some stuff off. So we're gonna, like I said, when I originally started this, guys, it's gonna be several videos broken up over time. I'm just gonna work on it as I can. And so you'll see other short videos in between, but we wanna get the front suspension started today. I think that's where I wanna start. And so what we need to do is we need to get all the old stuff out of the way. So we need to get, I've already got it lifted with a jack in the front, got some jack stands under it. We're gonna get the wheels and tires off. And we're gonna look at the suspension and see exactly what we need to take off. Obviously, we need to get the upper and lower control arms off. There's gonna be some trimming. We gotta get the springs out, gotta get the brakes off. I'm thinking, guys, if I can find a smaller catch can, I'm gonna put it underneath the master cylinder there, the brake master. I'm gonna undo that bolt that goes into the end and let it just kind of drip out into the pan. At least that's what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna try to do that first. That way we're not, I mean, we're gonna leak brake fluid. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it, but I'm thinking we're gonna disconnect the brake line right here where it starts into the rubber line, but we'll probably look at that once we get the wheels off. So I'm gonna whip the wheels off real quick, and we'll take a look at what we've got. Now that we've got the wheel and tire off, I did, guys, bust the brake line loose on the other side, just because I wanted to relieve some of the pressure. Look, we're gonna make a mess anyway, but maybe that'll help. So now that we've got the wheel off, I've turned it all the way to one side. And normally, guys, I think a lot of people would take these off like upper A-arm, lower A-arm, all as one piece, but it's ridiculously heavy and I don't want to try to do that. So I'm going to bust it loose here at the ball joint. So in order to do that, we need to take our little keys out, our cotter keys out of the top and the bottom. So I'm going to do that real quick. I noticed that my upper tie rod doesn't have one, even though it's supposed to. But normally you would take it out as well. So let's get all three of those out. Generally how I get those out, guys, is I just use some side cutters and kind of bend them out straight. And a lot of times they're brittle and old and they'll just break. But I'm gonna have to have two hands to do this. So we'll get those out and we'll see what size. I'm sure it's standard. Everything else has been 3/4 to get the lug nuts off. 3/8 on the brake line size. So generally most of these older cars like this are all standard. I'm going to start with the tie rod end. The upper's 3/4, the bottom 7/8. The tie rod end is 11/16. And so we're going to get that one loose, knock it loose, and then we'll have, you know, we can move the wheel back and forth. And then I've got my other jack here to put underneath this while we loosen those up. You don't want that spring shooting out the bottom. Now we still have the shock in the middle, so it's not as big a deal, but you know, that spring, if you just take these off and that pops loose, that spring could pop out and really hurt you. So let's get this loose first. May have to tap it with the hammer to get this loose. I'm gonna be replacing the ball joints at some point, or the tie rods, the outer and inner tie rods at some point anyway, but for now, I do wanna go ahead and get that loose. So a little good news, bad news. Good news is I got it loose. Bad news is I have beat the crap out of it with this 4-pound hammer, and I can't get it loose. I mean, I have beat and beat and beat on this thing. You can see all the dust that's falling out of the brakes while I've been knocking around on it. So there is 2 bolts that hold, this is a 2-piece deal. I guess a guy could take the bolts out of the back, and that may be what we do. This bolts on to the back of the spindle. So I may take those out just to get it loose and out of the way. I mean, like I said, guys, we're gonna be replacing that whole tie rod end. So at this point, I just want it out of the way, really. Same struggle here, guys. Okay, so these bolts on the inner, they're 5/8, but there's obviously a nut or something behind there. So I loosened the inner, same situation. Can't knock those things out. Guys, I have beat the crap out of them and I can't get them out. So I'm gonna call in some reinforcements, and when I say that, I'm gonna go grab my air hammer. I'm gonna put the smallest end I have right there in the middle. I left the castle nut on so I didn't mushroom out the top side of that where it wouldn't go through if I did get it loose. Since I was kind of hammered on the top. Normally you wouldn't do that, but since we're replacing them, it's, you know, it's not a big deal. But I'm gonna go get my air hammer and we're gonna put a chisel or something there, and we're gonna see if maybe that will knock it loose, maybe just the shaking and the hammering on it. I didn't really want to do that, but hey, look, we're really early in this process and it's already giving us fits. So about 2 seconds with my air hammer and it came loose. So now we can take the nut off the top, and we'll have this thing out of the way. Oh, of course it's spinning now. That's okay, we'll get that off. I'm not worried about that. But either way, we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll move on to the upper and lowers. Once we got that loose, I did go ahead and knock the brake line loose right here. So you can see the little clip right there beside the air hose. Knock that out. That's a 3/8, guys, on the line. And I noticed that nothing is dripping out of this, which is kind of like, you know, we had brake issues. We knew that. But either way, I did also loosen the 3/4 on the top, 7/8 on the bottom. They're just loose. So at this point, I'm going to roll my jack under here. And I'm gonna probably, since I have my air hammer handy, instead of just swinging and swinging and swinging, I'm just gonna put a hammer end on that instead of that blunt point. And we'll just hammer it out. Once it loosens up, then hopefully we can get the spindle out of the way and then relieve the pressure on the jack and continue. Holy cow, did those ball joints put up a fight, guys. Same with the tie rod, but oh my gosh, I beat on these with my air hammer forever. I used my mallet, and holy cow, we finally got the thing off. I got the top one off relatively quick, but the bottom one, man, it fought me. I went ahead and obviously took the spindle, the brake, the whole assembly is sitting there on the ground. So now we can continue. I generally like to leave the shock in just for safety reasons. Sometimes that'll help that spring from popping out if something went all wrong. You know, that's it. Generally the spring, if it wants to come out, it'll probably snap that shock in half. But now I want to get the shock out. And honestly, guys, what I may do is I'm gonna let my jack down a little bit, try to renegotiate it, because it's covering the bolt for the other side here. I don't think I can get to it. No, I can't. So I'm gonna move my jack into a different position. And once I do that, then we'll get the shock bolts out. There's 2 on the bottom and 1 up there on the top on the frame. You can see I repositioned the jack. I don't like putting it under the ball joint, but that was the safest spot for it, honestly. So got the shock out, 9/16 on the top, 1/2 inch on the bottom is what it was. I use my impact for that, guys, because a lot of times if you try to use a wrench or ratchet by hand, that guy will just spin. This side's actually loose. Look at that. I did not loosen that side. That's interesting. So now we're gonna let the jack down really carefully. We're gonna try to be careful. And of course the ball joint's gonna fold over on me. That's another reason why I don't like leaving it there. But there we go. You wanna be careful, that spring's under a lot of pressure. There we go. Spring is out. Holy cow, guys. All right, now we got that out, we can work on the upper and the lower A-arms. Guys, generally there's shims in the uppers for alignment reasons. You need to keep those, and we'll show you, well, I'll show them to you here in a little bit, but you need to keep those in place, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and see what wrenches or sockets we need for the uppers and lowers, and that'll be our next step, is getting those out. Now there's a couple different ways you could take this bottom one out. You could pull the bolts out of the end and try to thread that big long bolt out. I believe there's a pivot bolt that goes along the whole thing, but the new lower A-arms come with a new bracket as well. So I think that's all part of the A-arm, and I may be wrong. There may not be a shaft in that. It may just be on the ends. But either way, we're gonna take the bolts out that go into the frame. So you can see we've got 4 bolts total. I pushed the A-arm as far as I could down. And in order to do that, guys, of course, the bushings are kind of shot. You may have to loosen the end in order to get it to fold down where you want it. But I'm gonna go ahead, and there's a nut or a bolt on the top, obviously a nut on the bottom. So you're gonna have to put a wrench in there, otherwise it's just gonna spin. But we're gonna take the front ones out, the ones closest to me here, and then we're gonna fold it up and try to get the back ones, because I don't have enough room with the A-arm there unless I used a wrench, and I'd rather not use a wrench. I'm gonna use my impact. Got all the nuts and bolts out, so we're just gonna try to, there we go, pull this thing out of the way now. You can see I've got a couple still left in there. I'll pull those out. I don't think those are the factory ones. And if they are, maybe somebody lost some bolt ends because they're different sizes. I don't know. We may look into getting replacement bolts because I'm pretty sure the kit doesn't come with them. But either way, it's a good idea to keep this stuff, guys. Kind of set it aside. I've got them all kind of set the way they came out here. I'm going to set them over kind of back here where down the road, when we're going back together, we know where everything goes. But either way, we got that part loose. And so now we can go to the top, which I'm probably going to go to the inside to show you guys that part. There's only 2 bolts that hold the upper on. That's this guy and this one. And you can see how much more room without the motor in I'm going to have. But you can also see the shims, guys. We need to make sure we keep those. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to lift this up and get a socket on the inside while we're loosening the one on the outside. There's just no way around it. But let's get these 2 off, and then I'll show you the shims out of place. 11/16 is what I use to unbolt them here. Guys, I don't know if these are supposed to come out or what, but either way, they're in there. But you can see the shim that I'm talking about. So we're going to keep these, and we're also going to keep them with the upper A-arm. So we'll keep this one in the front, this one in the back. We're going to do the same thing when we go to the other side. So at this point, guys, I'm going to knock out the other side. I won't show you that part. And then we'll look at what we need to cut, because there is a few things we need to cut, we need to drill in order to make room for that shockwave bag and the new shock. We now have the other side taken apart. So guys, we've got to do some cutting, we've got to do some drilling, but which we'll get to. But before I do that, I told you guys I want to we're redoing brakes at the same time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the line here, and I'm going to bend it over so it's into my pan, let all the stuff in the master drip into it. After I do that, then I'm going to go ahead and just undo these guys and get this line here completely loose. So there's a T-fitting. There's only one line to the master, which is, like I said, is really dangerous, and you could never get away with that nowadays. But what we will do is we'll take the T-fitting off right here so we can get all this out as one piece, aside from what goes up to the master and then what goes to the back. I also took the motor mounts out. I took them, obviously we took the motor off the mounts, but I took the mounts out, and we're not going to be reusing those obviously either. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do next. Get these brake lines out, and then we'll talk about, what we need to cut and kind of what that's going to look like. The next step here is we got some cutting to do, we got some drilling to do. So you need to you see these guys here? We need to knock that out. And so I'm going to go grab a punch, and I'm going to knock that out of the bottom, but we need to drill this hole to 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to use a stepped drill bit to do that. But we need to get that out. So we're going to start there. And then guys, I'm going to take you through the process here we got to put a sway bar on. So we've got to knock out a rivet in the frame. We got to drill a couple holes in the frame, but then we have to clearance some stuff underneath, which I'll show you in a minute. But let's get these knocked out next on both sides and get that drilled to 3/4. It shouldn't be much. It's pretty close to 3/4 now. Got those knocked out with a chisel. Put my 3/4 inch step drill bit in here, and look, it's already at 3/4 of an inch. So we don't need to do anything there. I'm assuming maybe just wear over time has caused that hole to get a little bigger. So if you guys have a newer, frame maybe, or one that doesn't have as many miles, this only shows 40,000, but who knows how many it had on it, over time. But either way, we don't have to drill that. But the next step is we're gonna have to knock, you see these little rivets that we have in the frame, like that's how they put the frame together from the factory. We've got to knock one of those off up here up in the front. And the reason we have to do that is for the sway bar. So I'm gonna get under there. I think I'm gonna do it first. What I'll do is we're gonna cut an X in it with my grinder, and I'll show you that. And then I'm going to use my air hammer and a chisel to knock the head off the rivet. So we want to do that next, just because I'm dreading cutting the spring area. I don't know why, because it's above my head, and I hate cutting above my head. So yeah, I'm kind of putting that off, but we got to cut that as well. But we need to keep moving, so we'll get under there and I'll show you where the rivet needs to be cut. Wouldn't you know, out of like all these rivets, this guy right here is the one we need to remove. Now there's going to be one on both sides. This is the bumper, the front bumper obviously. This rivet right here is the one we're gonna have to remove. So like I said, guys, I'm gonna use my die grinder or my DeWalt grinder. I'm gonna cut an X in this, and this is generally the way I take these things out. So if you cut an X in it, then you can take your air hammer and just chisel this thing off. So I'll kind of show you as I go once I get the X cut in it. I don't like showing you guys as I'm grinding because it jacks up my GoPro lens. So that's what our next step is. We're gonna cut that, get it knocked off. But I wanna show you also while we're down here, the other stuff we're gonna have to cut. So we have to cut this lip off. You can see this lip right here. That has to be cut off in order for clearance for the bags. You don't want it to hit the bag. The other thing we have to do, and this is where I'm dreading cutting this because that's gonna suck. But this, we have to cut this flange off too, where the spring cup set in. We have to cut that and make that flush as well. So it's not a ton of cutting, but it's over your head. I mean, I can get out here a little bit, but we're still gonna have to cut that. Now this guy is gonna stay in place, but we're gonna have to come right up against this and cut it, which chances are, guys, I'm gonna cut it and then I'll do a majority of the cleanup work with my flap wheel. Well, as I told you guys, we were gonna start on the frame rivet. We just got done with the shock towers. I told you we were gonna cut an X in the frame rivet. We were gonna start there. So I was putting off cutting around the spring perch and whatnot, but guess what? I'm looking under there, getting ready to get all my stuff over here and start cutting, and I find a crack. And honestly, got a crack in the frame. And I'm gonna show you where it's at. Honestly, guys, it's really deflated me. I was so bummed. This is actually 3 days later. I haven't even came out to the shop. I've been so bummed because I was so excited about putting this stuff on and really getting this thing setting right. So let's take a look at where it cracked. And I guess it's pretty common for them to crack. So a lot of times, guys, they crack in this area here or this area here, basically where this cross member bolts down. So the crack that I have, I don't know if you guys can see it. There you can. See it right there? And that crack goes from the inside, all the way inside, all the way down to here. Now, could we fix it? Yes. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine who does a majority of my welding. Like I told you guys, he would probably be the one that did the pieces to the rear end. But I don't know. Guys, I've been back and forth on this. I'm gonna be real honest with you. I've been so bummed about what should I do. So there's a couple different options as far as fixing it. For one, it really needs, the frame needs to come out in order to do it the right way. And it would make life a little easier for me as far as getting, if I got the body off the frame, you know, we could potentially leave a majority of the stuff in. I may take the seats out for weight reasons, but if I got the body off the frame, then we could cut the old transmission mounts off. We could kind of smooth some stuff up and make it look nice. Maybe even repaint it, you know, while it's out. But then we would have the ability to flip it over and be able to weld a lot easier instead of him laying on the ground and whatnot. We'd also be able to look for any other cracks. Now, I don't see any on the other side, but that doesn't mean there's not. I guess it's a pretty common area for these things to crack. So we could do that. I've looked into subs. When I say sub, I mean like a subframe. So you essentially, or a clip, you would cut it off about where the exhaust pipe is. And like Scott's, for instance, Scott's Hot Rod, they make a front clip. Now that would do a couple things. For one, it would give me a newer modern style suspension in the front. It would look a lot nicer than this. And it would give me power steering, power rack and pinion steering, so we could do away with the steering box. We could not, however, use any of the Ridetech stuff in the front. We could still use it in the back. That kit's about, we'll say about $5 grand, and it would require cutting the frame off, you know, like I said right there, flush, welding the new clip on, and going that route. The other route is obviously buying a complete frame. And guys, I don't know. For one, I don't have the money to spend on doing a whole frame unless I were to sell something, and I really don't want to get rid of anything that I've got here. And so it kind of boils down to I basically got 3 decisions. So first decision being, we pull the frame out. We got to pull the frame out either way. The clip we wouldn't have to necessarily. We could just cut it off. We would have to take the front fenders and stuff off, but we could cut it off there, do that route. I still think I would probably take the frame out from under it if we did that, just because it would make life a little easier installing the stuff in the back. So that's one of the options. Okay, so first option being fix the frame that's in it, take it out from under it, get it all fixed, clean it up, maybe even put some additional bracing in. I've been looking at some Art Morrison bracing and whatnot. Second option is put the clip on the front. Still, I'm gonna pull the frame out from under it. And the third option is maybe wait a little bit and get an entire frame. That is the direction I'm leaning, because I could sell the Ridetech components that fit the stock chassis. That would recoup some of the money. And then we're looking, depending on what frame I go with, I've looked at a couple different options. Art Morrison is not one that I really care for. It would really boil down to Schwartz Performance. I've reached out to them, I'm waiting for a response. Of course, like Scott's, they also make a full frame. And then Roadster Shop. You guys know that I'm a big fan of the Roadster Shop stuff. I just don't know that it's worth going to. So the guy that I bought my C10 from back there, he has a Tri-5, and he says, man, you don't have to get these things to ride nice, you don't necessarily have to do an aftermarket frame. If you do some good upper and lower A-arms, a better steering box, they really ride and drive great. So maybe I'm overthinking it, guys, but anyway, I'm gonna end the video here just because, like I said, it's really kind of at a stop, think point. Let me know what you guys think I should do. Should I fix what I've got? Obviously, that's the cheapest option. Next step up would be the clip option. That would be a little more expensive, and I would still have to find, well, they make an airbag setup for the front. It's a little bit different. I couldn't use the Ridetech in the front, but I could use it in the back. And then the last option, obviously, be getting a frame. Still, we'd have to sell the Ridetech stuff. So let me know what you guys think I should do. Let me know if you've ever ran into any of this stuff. You know, sometimes working on hot rods is not, I mean, it's always fun. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this. I love working on it. But sometimes when you're so excited, something goes wrong and it just doesn't work out. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm really bummed about this deal. I was so excited. But look, I just need to maybe move my excitement to something else for a minute and continue this when I either figure out what I want to do or come up with some more money to do the expensive one. So anyway, if you guys have enjoyed this video so far, or are enjoying the 55 build, go down there in the comments and let me know about it. Of course, like always, guys, if you are not subscribed, go down and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there doing all that, ring that bell icon. That notifies you when we drop a new video so you can see me fail. And stay tuned to see what we work on next.